All right.
So the next step in the process is preparing the wool for cutting. So the first thing you want to ask yourself, and just as a point of interest, any pattern that you have for applique, you can easily do in wool. You don't have to do it, even if it's designed for needle turn, you can adapt it easily for wool. But you will see, as we've shown up here, that there are some books that are specifically done for applique with wool. But, and the first thing you need to do is read the instructions. Don't skip through and go to the pattern and say, I know how to do this. Because the first thing you have to understand is the pattern reversed or not? So for needle turn, most of the time it is reversed, but you really, not all the time. So you really need to read that first section, you know, those first 10 pages that we skip over. Don't do that. Look and see, because if you don't, you might have the reverse image of what you were expecting. So that's the first question you need to ask yourself. Then you need to decide how you are going to attach your pieces to your background. Are you going to use an adhesive, which means you lay it down and you actually adhere it to the background, or are you going to pin it? Now, Judy does like the adhesive, and I've done it, but in most of these that I have up here, because they're smaller pieces, I like to piece. I really don't, pin. I really don't like to add a lot of chemical stuff to my pieces. I was just told, you know, very early on not to do that, so I try and avoid that if I can. So I prefer to use freezer paper for my stuff. If you're going to use an adhesive, some of the products that you're going to use would be like Wonder Under, Steam-A-Seam 2, Steam-A-Seam Light, Heat and Bond, but don't make the mistake that I did and get the heavy duty thinking it's really going to stick, because you got to sew through it. And it's a real bear to sew through that really thick stuff. So, you know, think about that before you pick your adhesive.
There's a light one out.
Yeah.
Very, and that some of the wool stores are carrying,
Yeah.
because a lot of them do use it.
What brand?
So if you couldn't hear in the back, what Judy's saying is that Steam-A-Seam also has a light version, and that's really
No,
good.
it's heat, it's
Heat.
Steam Bond has a light, but Heat Bond also.
Oh,
And it
okay.
has a featherweight also, which is being used for wool.
Okay. So just think about that when you're choosing your adhesive. And then if you're pinning your project, you would need to use freezer paper and pins. And God, there's 1,000 different kinds of pins you can use. So now you've decided I'm going to either adhere it with freezer paper or, with an adhesive, or you're going to use freezer paper. Then you need to mark and cut the pattern pieces, okay? Now, when you do that, we recommend you use a permanent marker. Do not use an ink pen, because it will smudge and make a big mess. Or you can use a number 2 pencil. I like the number 2 pencil. When you cut your pieces, when you get your pattern, you might have a piece for every thing on there, or you might have one piece for 20 leaves, for example. So when you're cutting out your pieces or marking your pieces, mark what number it is, so if it's A, B, C, or D, and also how many pieces you need for each one of them. And I think if you're doing a piece project, we're in the habit of doing that anyway, but it really saves some time if you number them as you go along so that you know how many you need. And I like to put mine in a little baggie if I've got more than one.
And there's some samples on the table that show you that.
Yes. And so Judy's got some samples up there. They're little wedges, and it shows the process as we're going along. So when we're done, if you'd like to go up and take a look, you can look at that. Also, you need a good pair of sharp scissors. I have a couple of favorites. I like Karen K. Buckley. She's got a serrated scissor that I think is just wonderful. She's got them in all different sizes. I think there's Kai, yeah. And she's even got the little embroidery ones. I put a list together for Christmas and said I want these, and Santa was good that year. But use a pair of sharp scissors, and Judy has a little rotary cutter that she can use.
It's a finger rotary cutter. To cut around, so whatever. It's Fiskar. I got it at my quilt shop, at the Quilter Pro.
So like with
But it's a
piecing,
Fiskar product, so if you look online, it's a small rotary cutter, but it gives you a lot of flexibility when you're going around corners.
and another key is don't remove any of the adhesive until you've laid your project down. Keep the adhesive on it, you don't want a big mess. And the same with the freezer paper, because it might come in helpful to know where you need to place it. So that's preparing the wool. Does anybody have a question on preparing the wool? Then I'm going to choose.
So for the freezer paper, do you iron the freezer paper
Yeah, the wax side down so it sticks.
on in there?
Yeah, and sometimes when I do mine, if I've got a lot of leaves, I will take a big piece of the green, and I will just do the whole thing, and then I will trace it on, or you could trace it on before. It depends. You know, everybody's got their favorite way of doing it, but I tend to look at how many I need and kind of figure what size piece I need for that. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Jim.
I don't understand. Where do you put the freezer paper on top of your wool and then cut around it, or what?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
so you put it, it doesn't matter, wool doesn't
But
have a
that's
right
not
side
an-
and a wrong side, isn't that wonderful?
But that's not, okay, so where does the adhesive come in? Behind or
No, he's not using it.
on top?
Yeah, you only use the freezer paper if you're going to pin it.
Okay.
You use one or the other, not both.
Okay.
And so now Judy's gonna take over and she's gonna talk about, now you've got them cut out, so now you gotta put them on the background. So Judy's gonna talk about that.
a look around. They're just amazing, just absolutely amazing. So thank you so much for doing that.
You're very welcome.
So moving along.